Hey, welcome everybody. This is the first week of February here in 2025. I have a new guest and a new company on. I've got Ian Graham, president of Oroco Resources. And Oroco, this is not a tiny pre-discovery explorer looking to get their name out. Oroco is a well-known name. They had a lot of market love in the previous years. They do have a very strong project. They have the Santo Tomas coppery project in northern Sinaloa, Mexico. Here you can see the cap structure, right? I mean, they are a mature company, closer to construction decision than they are to their discovery hole. So the share count is higher, but the good news is they have a very good project, right? Is that they have, here it is in Mexico there, but they have 8 billion pounds of in situ sulfides, copper equivalent, 6 billion pounds of payable copper equivalent at a grade of about 0.36 if you combine the inferred and the indicated. I know that there are some concerns around Mexican jurisdictional questions around open pit and relationships with mining with Sheinbaum and former AMLO. We will get to that in its own due time, but I still think that for me as some sort of purveyor of truth in this industry, that when you approach Oroco here, this is one of those classic asymmetrical risk reward opportunities. We'll talk about kind of the pendulum swinging and momentum of sort of FOMO and ticker momentum. And sometimes they swing too far one way, and that creates a pretty compelling opportunity for people. But rather than me just sitting here and doing all the talking, I'll get Ian Graham here in off the bench and into the game. So yeah, Ian, thanks for coming on, and thank you for your time. And maybe I'll, as a way to get you talking, do you want to just what did I miss? What's the elevator pitch that I missed talking about there in that intro?
No, I think you encapsulated our situation very well, Matt. Thanks for having me on. No, precisely as you say, we've got history. The acquisition of the project was an historical story in itself. We've done a lot of drilling. We've pulled the project through to a PEA, which we regard as being a very nice indication of the value of the project around a core mining thesis. And I think you summarized that really well. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is the thing large projects, big numbers, but that you clear critical benchmarks in terms of valuations, and maybe we'll get into this a bit more, but I might just, again, rather than me just monologuing, I'm going to start peppering the questions over to you here, Ian. I think the first one, and I think it serves as sort of a segue, though. It's my point here is that I don't want to spend too much time talking about Oroco, who Oroco is, and Oroco in the past. More so where it is now and where it's going into the future, because I think there's probably more value there. First, very small question. You just announced financing. 1.5 million is small, right? If you read through the PEA, the recommendations from the PEA are, by the hour, the Canadian dollar is losing value here currently, but it's about 15 or 16 million Canadian to get to PFS ready, to complete PFS work. Maybe can you just walk through why you went for a smaller financing right now versus a larger one, and maybe reflect on, what is that telling the market or why, I guess?
Absolutely. No, the plan is to fund that PFS. And as you indicated, that's a $15 million piece of work that needs to be done over the next period of time. And so we will be raising significant capital. We're preparing for that significant raise, which we anticipate will be institutionally led, hopefully by the well-known institutions. But at the present time, we're conducting a small bridge financing, simply to facilitate the preparation of the documents required for the shelf prospectus, which includes an updated annual information form. So we're making good progress on that. But one of the key maxims in the business is to make sure you always got more than just reserve in the tank. And so we're taking this opportunity to do a small raise, which will give us the security and the bridge through to being ready to do the institutional financing.
Okay, and then this is the transition for me here, because I wanted to talk about bringing on a strategic, bringing on institutions, a JV of some, whatever that manifests itself, however that turns out. But when I speak to some executives who, and not to carry water too much or pound the drum too hard here, but executives who know their products are undervalued sometimes are reluctant to give away a piece of the pie, 5% or whatever, whatever that number is, at low valuations, because they don't want to sell at a low valuation. They don't want to sell at a discount. And I think when you that sense of emotional ownership you want your executive team to have over the company can be difficult to kind of square that away with, the depressed value, right? And so, but for me, on the flip side is that sometimes maybe the best catalyst to revive a stock is institutional interest, right? That legitimacy that like you say, respected and well-known names can bring. Is it fair? Yeah, it's fair to say that is that a tension that you as a group, as a company, had to kind of work through? The idea of bringing on an institution now at valuations that you wholeheartedly believe are too low for what you have?
No, we simply have to move into the future. Certainly, the period of our PEA was somewhat protracted because we did a second round of mine planning work in order to fully liberate the value of Santo Tomas. That took a little time in 2024. And now we need to move through PFS. And that's a tranche of work that requires to be financed. We know that. And we just need to get our heads down and do it. And we really do want to introduce the institutional participation, because that comes with a certain amount of leadership and nous and contacts across the business and the industry. So I think to properly get us on the map and on the radar screen of the industry at large, we need institutional participation. You could argue we're perhaps a little late in bringing that institutional participation to Oroco. So no, we're quite keen to do that and to broaden the participation in the company. That said, we've been thrilled with our support out of the retail sector over the years, but it is simply time to move into an institutional bracket.
And I guess maybe, and so I have up here the resource as it stands, right? I mean, the North Pit all indicated, or almost entirely all indicated, still split 50-50 with the inferred. So clearly, to get to PFS, those will have to be upgraded to indicated to get those included. So there is drilling to come. And I think that it's about half of that $15 or $16 million in drilling. Maybe can you just walk us through and you know what, I'll relinquish my screen here and we'll cut if we have to, but I've actually got Ian. He's going to bring up his Leapfrog model, and I just want Ian, let's just walk through this. I mean, where are you drilling? What has to happen? The meter just required. I'm listening to a prior conversation or prior webinar of yours. The advantage here is that your holes can be terminated more shallowly, so there's money to be saved on a per hole basis, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll surrender my screen here to you, and maybe let's bring up the Leapfrog model of.
So clearly, we're looking at the left side of the screen at the North Zone pit. We're viewing this to roughly the northeast from the southwest. Substantial amount of drilling done in North Zone, and most of that, as you commented, is indicated. There is less drilling in South Zone. I think we managed to sort of peg all the edges and the base of South Zone, but clearly we need to get into this area and extend it down to the southwest. If you are able to see my mouse, we need to infill down in this southwest part of the pit. I think you can observe that we need some infill here, and certainly up in between the prior holes drilled in 2023. So we definitely need to do that additional drilling, and that will be the focus, and essentially lifting the classification of the resource into indicated for South Zone. That'll be the focus. We also have mineralization, and again, if you can see my cursor here between North and South Pit, we have this so-called pillar zone. It is mineralized, albeit apparently a narrower and shallower mineralization. And so we need to move some of that into an indicated category, and that will help us a little with dropping the strip ratio by a small amount. and also increasing the copper available for mining. So, some small wins to be taken. We do expect a very subtle shave and a lift in the grade in parts of South Zone. So, it's necessary work to upgrade the resource. And perhaps what I'll do is just give a sense of the current block model. So hopefully we'll extend the resource just a little here to the southwest, and we'll be able to infill some of the resource in terms of classification, and hopefully a little bit in grade in some of the blocks in the central part of South Zone. And then we need to increase the confidence in the block model through the pillar in this mid area here. And we're also hopeful that we'll perhaps be able to lift some of the blocks in the model above cutoff through that program. Essentially, we do not expect the resource to change materially, but to the extent it changes, we expect, subtle rise in the value of what's in situ. We wouldn't anticipate that work will in any way, significantly change the project that comprises North and South Zone. That would require work, perhaps to explore Brasiles and the connection between the North Zone and Brasiles.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stage you're at, right? Those incremental changes. Yeah, when you've got a 23-year mine life or whatever it is, those incremental changes can have a very material impact on NPV, cash flow, et cetera, right? So it's getting into the boring stuff, or you're transitioning from the blue sky dreamers to the pencil pushing data crunchers. But yeah, these incremental changes make a real difference. I might ask you just a couple of questions. I might focus on the pillar zone. Had it been drilled before? Are there barren holes? I mean, how reasonable or how confident is the expectation that will be mineralized to a degree that can be included in a resource?
It has been tagged, as you can see here. The block model shows mineralized blocks in there, and that is from historical intercepts, historical drilling, and some of the small amount of drilling we've done in there. It is mineralized. What we need to do is better constrain it. And just give ourselves greater certainty, and that will drive the mine plan a little bit. At the present time, we sort of have to drive out of both the north and the south pits to high elevation before trucking material out of the pit. In the event that pillar is mineralized to greater depth than we currently define it, we would be able to change the pit, albeit subtly, and shorten and reduce the energy required to move material out of both the north and south pits. So again, as you indicated, Matt, the opportunities here, they're small wins, but in some, they should improve the economics of the project and the mineability of the resource.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick follow-up here, just based on visuals. Is there any, in the South Zone here, is there any rock that's just classified waste rock right now because it hasn't been, there's not a hole close enough for it to be upgraded to inferred? Is there kind of a chance to seeing a little bit of a reduction in waste rock just from drilling out what is continually mineralized? Or I guess I'll stop there.
We believe so, but again, small amounts. And so, we definitely want to moderate expectations, but we do expect the opportunity is to the upside. So, yeah, exciting, and the work is justified and will enhance our confidence around the resource, in particular in South Zone.
Okay. No, excellent. Yeah, not at all. And this is a story for people that want known commodities and known projects that are trading at a discount to what they could or should be, right? And like I say, I've got peer comps that maybe I'll throw into the article when I get there that demonstrate. I was talking to this with Ian prior to recording that there are. I think you can make a reasonable argument that anything but the top 1% of porphyries or 0.1% of porphyries are kind of hard done by right now in terms of valuations. But even within that macro truth, that I think that there's a reasonable case to be made that Oroco, even compared to its peers, there's room for it to reevaluate quite healthily and still have it just be in line with its peers. Why don't we just talk about timing then, right? So yeah, not to get kind of too bogged down into the details of the PFS and what it's looking to accomplish. Primary goal is just to get inferred into indicated. You know what you have. Get those billions of pounds of copper ready to go, and for a PFS, high confidence. Maybe just around timing then, right? I mean, do you anticipate having all of the work done for the PFS during 2025 and then kind of an early 26 rollout, or what's the schedule there?
That would certainly be a target, Matt. We need to get our shelf prospectus out and then do the financing that will underpin the PFS. But we are as anxious to get going with that as we could be. And hopefully we can do that financing work in the second quarter. And with I am a dreamer. I'm an exploration geologist by background. I would love to see us mobilize in Q2 of this year and get after the job. We expect that we have somewhere between 15,000 and 20,000 meters of drilling to do. That will include some geotechnical work in order to go from PEA to PFS. We clearly need a little more in the engineering side of calibration on our rock quality descriptions, etc. So we need to do a bit of that work. A little bit of geohydrological work needs to be added. So we will do all of that. And yes, aspirationally, we do all of that field work in calendar 2025. And then are hard at work on the studies and the PFS. To release that in some reasonable time frame in 2026. So yes, aspirationally, that would be the aim.
Well, then maybe you kind of brought up the topic that I'll jump to just for a moment here. I mean, you are right next to, there's a dam, produced a reservoir sometime in the last 25 years. And so there's a river there. Maybe I'll get you to be navigating here for me, Ian, but maybe I'll ask you to get a view where we can see that. Is there concerns, I guess maybe a two-part question here, not to complicate things too much on you, but, one, how much does that proximity to the river impact your ability to, I understand that there's, lately the mineralization goes under the river over to Brasiles, is my understanding. You can tell me if I've got that wrong. I don't think that you guys are in a position to be moving the river. But so I guess how much does it impact what you could actually, economically, meaningfully turn into a mine plan?
Right. So essentially what I've tried to do here is zoom us in on the pit as designed in the PEA and show that we have brought development up to and very, very, very close to the high water mark in the river system, in the Fuerte Dam river system, and leave an area, essentially a sort of high wall berm between the water body and the pit development. And so that is a buffer that is reasonable and would be permittable. So as you suggested, we're not taking all of the resource. About a third of the resource is outside the pit development that you see there and extends under the river and almost certainly connects with the intersected mineralization at Brasiles. However, for development, we've taken this fairly conservative approach, and what you see here in the mine plan would not impact the river at all.
No, good. Excellent. I like that. Full stop. I like that.
Yeah. No. And we have a very fortunate situation with our CEO. He built the dike system at the Diavik Diamond Mine that keeps Lac de Gras out of the 4 open pits at the Diavik Mine. You can view that from Google Earth. And so Richard has very, very strong background in keeping water out of pits. And and he has been, closely involved in the development of this pit. And this is some of the reason we'll do geohydrological work. We need to characterize the rock between the pit and the river in a little more detail.
Excellent. And yeah, not to get too bogged down in technical detail, but that was just a quick follow-up question here too. I just read in the PEA, I thought it was clever. You move, in the plan, you move the water wells to closer to the river to serve as, pump jacks to keep the water table low. Is there risk of contamination, or do the rocks play nice in terms of seepage or that sort of thing? Are there other mitigating effects or mitigating circumstances or mitigating efforts that you have to do, or is it, not to be too punny here, pretty rock solid as is?
Oh, I expect the rock we may need to do a little bit of grouting, etc. And whenever there is water in a pit, it's never pure and clear. We are very fortunate on this site, though, Matt, because we have in the geology and partially mined out, if you can sort of see where my cursor is here, when mining takes place, we'll take metal limestones from this part of the pit, essentially in the northwest segment of the North Pit, and those limestones will be used for acid neutralization as liner in tailings and under waste rocks, etc., and can also help with water management and containment facilities. So I think we're blessed there as well with some of sort of nature's bounty. They've included some naturally neutralizing material in the geology. So that's fantastic. But yes, there will be water management, and almost certainly there'll be water ingress into that pit. There may be some requirement for managing that water, such as grouting. But as you can see, it's a fairly narrow component of the pit, and it is not the first part of the pit to be mined. We get close to the water a little later in North Pit mine life, and so management of those situations will be done in real time, and there will be a number of years to continuously monitor that as the pit is developed and to mitigate the water issues. So I think the great thing about this solution, very much driven by Richard's vision for the project and his historical sensitivities to water issues, has been to approach this very, very sensibly and in a manner that should give all parties, investors, through regulators, confidence that this mine plan can be operated effectively, well, and with minimum impact on the greater environmental concerns.
No, thank you. Like I say, not to go down that road too far, but it is a natural question. Right?
It's an issue that does come up more or less consistently, Matt. So I think it is something where we would prefer not to shy away from. Yep. We need to address it, and it is something that has been front and center, particularly for Richard, who brings a very strong engineering focus to the team. I want to go get it all, but it gives us that focus.
Keeps your feet on the ground, eh? Yeah.
Absolutely, the commercial and engineering focus to the extent possible, simplify and make sure that the stage-wise development, even at the PEA level, is sensible, defensible, and easily possible.
Excellent. Now, Ian, I'll ask you to relinquish control over your screen, and I'll take back here. Thank you for that. Okay, so no, I think that thank you, Ian. I want to just understand how much work was done, or how much work was required. You said 15,000 meters, lots of geotechnical, so that there's a decent drill campaign, but not anything kind of untoward or too large. I just wanted to, where was it here? Shucks. I guess I wanted to point out where I'll scroll up here. Excuse me. This is the one here that, in my conversations with Ian and Craig and Mike there with Oroco, that one of the things around Santo Tomas that the more you look at it, the more you see that all these little details combine to create a very compelling project, right? That all those little things that have to happen for a deposit to become a mine really does seem like those boxes get ticked. As you kind of go through, how would a major or mid-tier, or how would people who are serious about mining look at projects, and what do they look for? I really do think that Santo Tomas succeeds in checking a lot of those boxes, and that's why this is why I'm drawn to it. I think maybe people that start and end with grade, 0.37 is good enough. It's not high grade, it's not marginal, it's just good enough. But if you only look at grade, you're missing what's going on here. And maybe to turn this into a question, not just me monologuing here, Ian, maybe are there details that you want to highlight in terms of, like you say, like from a geologist or an engineering perspective, things that maybe a layman or a retail investor wouldn't understand without maybe being shoulder tapped about it?
No, I think you hit those high points. The strip ratio is the key, particularly with north-south zone outcropping on a hill. That really does impact the strip ratio, so that's strong. We have, as I think you inferred, fairly simple metallurgy, and so that's excellent. That makes sure that project simplicity is there. Pardon me. There is no such thing as an easy or simple mining project, but this one is about as straightforward as they get. So I think those are the things that make Santo Tomas attractive as a project. It's certainly what has enthused me. We're at low elevation, so we're not at sort of 4,000 meters in the Andes. We're at 400 meters. We're a drive-up project in essence, and close to infrastructure. And I think in that sense, Santo Tomas is greatly benefited and blessed by its location. Close to infrastructure, close to the coast, and easy access, ready access, low strip, etc. And I think you inferred all of those items.
But if I can now really pull a 180 on you guys, and here we see a nice little example of after-tax NPV compared to some peers, which I'll get into in my rating. But I'll pull a 180 now, right? Because I really do. I think it's a good project. I think that Santo Tomas, will it be a mine? Yes, right. But obviously there are, there's a hitch in the giddy up or a fly in the ointment or whatever analogy you want to work with there, because it's you guys, you're not trading at $1.30, you're trading at 30 cents, right? And so obviously there's been some events that have occurred that have caused that pendulum of momentum to swing too far onto the downside, right? And so there's a couple of topics that I'll bring up, and then I'll ask you to sort of reflect or discuss them. But maybe we'll start macro. Mexican open pit mining concerns, right? Obviously people read big scary headlines. AMLO had a big thing to say. Shane Baum comes in, but maybe I'll ask you, and I can't remember if I said this off air or on air. I apologize, but that I'm always people that are sensitive to jurisdictional risk makes sense, right? It's an unaccountable. You don't know what you don't know. It's unaccountable. If it's not even even worse if it's not your country because you just don't know the ins and outs of that nation, right? And so people that, err on the side of caution of jurisdictional concerns, I think makes sense. But this is critical, though, is that sort of universal sort of fear, it loses the truth of the detail on the ground and creates serious opportunity for people that are, degree of contrarian, people that know the context. And for me, I think that this is a perfect example of that, where I will say, will Mexico ban open pit mining? Like, no, period, right? And that's where so the fears are overstated, but I will ask you maybe in terms of what you see and as a company, right? Maybe the questions I'd ask is, what evidence has emerged with Shane Baum, maybe starting with this past spring's, Supreme Court decision there in Mexico. What evidence is her government? What evidence is Mexican court system providing that maybe these fears are overstated, and maybe that it'll be the new normal will be closer to the old normal than maybe people are afraid of.
No, thanks for that lead in, Matt. I think Mexico is, and certainly the Sheinbaum government is commencing a bit of a walk back from some of the approach to the precipice of no open pits that were in the news last year. So certainly there's evidence for that. The Alamos news release recently. Sure, that's permitting an underground development, but at an open pit underground mine site. We're seeing continued development at El Arco, which is a porphyry development on the Baja, basically on the border between the states of Baja North and South. just in the north part of the Baja. And that's continuing, and an EIA has just been filed on that, a MIA, which is an environment permit by Grupo Mexico. And as a group, they are very, very tightly integrated into the mining scene in Mexico. So we're seeing real indications that the northwest part of Mexico, Sinaloa, Sonora, and the Bajas, which are very mining friendly and mining dependent economically, are driving permitting at the federal level. So all indications are that permitting for mines, and we anticipate including open pits, will continue into the future, albeit under a regime that may pay a bit more attention to things like water utilization and the integration of indigenous residents that find themselves proximal to mine development. But all indications are that things will continue. And over and above that, there is a grandfathering effect on existing permits and concessions, and we certainly benefit from that. And in order to enjoy those benefits, you need those are constitutionally guaranteed. You mentioned the Supreme Court from last year, and we have filed the various amparos and other requirements to preserve and protect our constitutional rights. And we expect those to be honored. Mexico has a long and very good tradition in the Supreme Court of maintaining individual and organizational constitutional rights. So whilst there is a little change in the system, we will adapt to that, as miners typically are able to do, and continue from here. We're very, very hopeful and bullish with respect to what's going on under the new regime in Mexico. And so we intend to proceed to the PFS process through financing. It might be worth saying that, over the last year and certainly through 2024, our news flow was quiet. We were very focused on the PEA, and there was political change in Mexico, which, had an overlay on our 2024 performance, I guess. But we're very, very bullish on 2025 and are really looking forward to just getting into gear and driving forward on this PFS. And we're quite pleased with what we see developing at the federal level, but very particularly among the Northwest states. They are driving support at the central level for mining. Certainly Sonora is highly dependent on mining.
This will be you touched on this, and then maybe I'll circle back to it just as as an informal, just a comment for people to to sort of wrap their heads around. And but this is not, I'm not asking for official company policy or this is what Oroco Resources believes, but maybe just sort of Ian and Matt having a digital beer here. What are your personal thoughts on what you might see as changes? What are you, based on the rumblings? You were reading tea leaves. What do you see maybe potentially being new wrinkles added to legislation or what have you? You kind of touched on the indigenous thing and water usage. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Well, those will be the focus. We believe that Ms. Scheinbaum is focused on rural indigenous situation. I think she has a genuine concern for uplifting people across Mexico. And also, there has been in the recent years more talk about water, focus on water. So we anticipate those things will come to pass. We believe our situation in the Choix municipal area is very strong with respect to the community. I was a resident of Choix for a couple of years, along with my wife, Linda. She took a leave of absence, so we went down there through COVID. So we became part of the community. And We were made most welcome. We enjoyed living down there, and certainly we have the support of the community. Now, in the past, Goldcorp operated the El Sosal gold mine just east of us, about 18 kilometers east of us, so further into the mountains, a little further away from the infrastructure. But the community constantly asks of us, when is big mining coming back? When can they have their reasonably high-paying jobs back? And when will they be a mining community again? So we have support, including written petitions to the state government from the cities in Choix and El Fuerte, requesting that the state maximally support the development of Santo Tomas.
Yeah, that local, you do seem to have very sincere kind of local grassroots support. And when you start discussing potential changes to mining legislation, there are natural sort of extensions you can get from there. And people in your own backyard that like what you're doing is never a bad thing, right? So
it's true. They want to be part of it, Matt. And they want to be part of it sooner rather than later. So no, we're extremely fortunate. I actually perhaps neglected to mention that early on as one of the things that, at least in my view, makes Santo Tomas so attractive currently, is our local support. And, on the ground, our project is run by our partner in the project, and Donabaldo Treviso is resident of Choix, has been for a decade, and is, Mexican-American guy whose passion is to make sure that the people of Choix and the surrounding district are principal beneficiaries of the project.
Is there, just to finish off this topic, and thank you for that color, because I agree. Yeah, local stakeholder support. Boy, oh boy, it can make or break. It can produce a lot of headaches. I'll just say that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is there, and I actually asked this because I don't know. Is there sort of an endpoint in sight where you know that the Supreme Court, having issued its pause, it's expecting by end of Q2 to have its deliberations complete? Is there a sort of a known endpoint in sight that will settle this, or is there still is there a timeline that maybe even just you think or are confident on, or when do you think that these issues and currently kind of going around Mexican political circles, when will these be solved, I guess?
Matt, difficult for me to comment on. Certainly we keep a very close eye on that through David Rose, our in-house counsel, and counsel that we have in Mexico. But no, I don't have any sort of North Star that you could potentially hook the route to. But we do see there is real momentum in the sort of walk back that we observe. But no, unfortunately, I can't give any direct sort of date guidance on this. But we take a lot of heart. The MIA that was submitted for El Arco is in, and as far as we can tell, groups like Grupo Mexico are planning to operate normally, or as they might have done more typically in the past going forward. So, we're very heartened by that.
No, excellent. And so we might actually transition to kind of my last category of questions, such as they are. I just thought this was a good cross section here that I neglected to get onto the screen here for people. So there you really can see, right, that here's the river. There is North Zone that's well and indicated, and then the sparsity up here that will be the primary target. And there's that pillar and so a little bit of grade potentially here, and connecting these will, I'm sure, help with OPEX and CAPEX to a degree too. But I guess the final topic that I have here, I guess is going to be a degree of reflection again here. And maybe my preface to this will be, I'm a sucker for geos. I'm a sucker, the technically inclined, that there's a purity around the science, right? And a lot of geos are purists, and they get frustrated at how much the market actually matters, right? It should just be the rocks. It should just be, what we're building here, having to kind of go to the market and convince the market of these things. Why can't the rocks do all the talking? Totally get it. It's not to be too pithy or too cute, but it's wrong. The market does matter, right? This is the unfortunate, the necessary evil is that you have to do these things, and the market is extremely important, right, to any mining story. And so I bring this up because when you look back at the ticker, I don't have it up here. I'll bring it up for people in post production here, but I mean the ticker of Oroco is it's quite a chart, right? A 5-year chart. You started at 40 cents, and you were incredibly priced. You approached $4 off the top of my head, and now unfortunately you've kind of gone full circle, and now here you are back at 30 cents. And so I was saying to you, kind of, that if you know nothing about a company, but just, and you take the ticker off and just look at the chart, that's a troubling chart, right? It's a challenging chart for people that are new to the story to maybe want to jump into if you don't know the story and why. And I mean, maybe can I just ask you, maybe very generally, I mean, just what happened, I guess, partly, but then also maybe more so, I mean, what are you taking from that? You're here, you are now, you've got a great project, you're undervalued, and you're looking to get up off the mat. Maybe one eye in the past about what happened there to kind of help people understand, and then maybe one eye to the future about kind of lessons learned or how do you go about rebuilding that value that was lost?
Okay, great question. Prior to January of 2020, we had a loyal shareholder group that followed a process that acquired us the project. So that group were kept well informed of the steps forward and the one sideways and the odd one backwards through the acquisition of title. Starting in 2020, we had title, we had earned a majority position in the project, and we raised money and did geophysics with a plan to start drilling, which we did in Q2 of 2021. So the period of build-up through the commencement of drilling was filled with hope. We demonstrated a very, very large zone of chargeability, essentially coherent with and slightly larger than the historical drill results. And along with that, we had a rise in the price of copper, a fairly significant one. And the two together, and the fact that people, I guess, were at home, COVID was raging through that period and people had time to do homework on opportunities, we got a strong following. And that following was promoted online by, in particular, one independent party that I think told our story exceedingly well. So we ran up with the copper price, we started drilling, we started to get results that, in essence, confirmed the historical work. Yes, there was a slight extension in the resource and the likely volume of the resource, but in essence, it confirmed what was known historically. And so with that and a decline in the copper price, we came off some. I think we went to 364. It was the peak. We internally felt that was perhaps slightly excessive in terms of an valuation, given our state of development. And we have come off since. I think in the classical Lassonde curve sense, there is a natural transition between speculative investors and institutional investment, essentially occurring between what is the discovery and the early resource work, and then mine planning, basically at the feasibility study level and construction where there is a valuation recovery. I would argue we're in that the transition zone between speculation and institutional. Perhaps we have been a little slow in making the migration to institutional. And one of the overriders on that is probably the political situation in Mexico. That certainly cooled our ardor and the views of others in terms of, being full speed ahead on the project. That said, I think there's a change politically. I think we're in a very strong situation since last August with the PEA, and it is time to migrate to the institutional participation in our market, and to drive the PFS forward. And as you intimated earlier, be on that very, very firm ground of a likely future mining project, I'm of the view that Santo Tomas is a mine to be built. That's it is readily done. It will make a very meaningful contribution to world copper supply. It'll make 100,000 tons of copper a year for over 20 years, and there's significant additional resource. So I think it is one of the pieces in the copper supply puzzle. And I think it will be put into production. And so really it's us communicating through forums like yours, to be honest, and your own perhaps more measured and independent views that might help people see what those of us in the company who have drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak, think we see. So yeah, I think it's, and I think the global copper thesis that need that we, the need for more copper is true. And to whatever degree that is manifest, we need to be part of the additional copper required.
No, excellent. And, I think that speaking from myself and speaking personally, that the success of retail, of capturing the retail imagination, it produces a lot of emotion, right? And success or failure, stock goes up, stock goes down. There's a lot of emotion involved, and this is, when we first started communicating with each other and talking about the potential of working together and starting to kind of I'd heard about you a few years ago, re-immersing myself, et cetera, that this was something that I kind of wanted to confront and understand. Because people that are listening, past shareholders, new shareholders or potentially new shareholders knew the story that it's so critical to divorce emotion from your decision making because that baggage does not change project, right? And so this ability to dispassionately approach Oroco and Santo Tomas as is, where is currently, without having just said the ticker and the chart matters, but divorcing it from that understanding that this still remains an inherently valuable project. And, we can talk about chart damage and that's true, right? All those things. But I mean, you're trading at 1/20th P/NAV ratio of about 1/20th, right? I mean, it's wild, right? I mean, you're trading at a $70 million market cap, $80 million market cap. I haven't looked at the chart today, but, and, P/NAV or an NPV of 1.475 billion. There's a disconnect there, right? You can see here, this is from your slide deck. I mean, that even 1 penny per copper buyout, and they're both rough measurements and have to be used together, et cetera, et cetera. There's always limitations, but yeah, that by any objective metric, the opportunity for Oroco is upside right now at this point, right? That pendulum swing, like I say, maybe too much reward was priced in previously, and now certainly too much risk has been priced in for what you can get for this price point. And I mean, I'm not, same thing here. I am monologuing. I'm not sure I actually have a question for you after all that, Ian. I guess
it's great commentary. We share that view, Matt, and whilst we do try to be dispassionate, and certainly Richard drives a dispassionate approach to the company, I, for myself and a few others of us, are still, eminently grateful for our the support we've seen from our retail shareholders in the past. I'm excited by the future of the company. Very, I felt this way when I moved to Mexico to get the drilling done and build a team and all of that. That was one step. But I'm more confident today that the future mine sits in front of us as a result of the work we've done. And I think we're sort of starting again, certainly from a lower price than I might have imagined or hoped. But here we are. And I think we're sort of, the starting gun is to go off, and we will pursue the project hard as we did in the past, again, in 2025. And with a view to, something really exciting happening as soon as we can make it happen. But PFS in hand, we will work really, really hard to deliver value for those who've participated historically and those who are going to participate between now and when that event occurs.
And so, I mean, I think we're approaching where we're officially longer than I want it to be, but here we are. And so we're at the end here. I mean, so 2025, a lot of PFS work, all that geotechnical work, a lot of work to get done to get ready for PFS. Are there other potential news items that you might want people to point to, just as a final thought?
Not discreet, but we certainly are going to try to project more content regarding the company, regarding the project, and sort of diversify, if you want, the communications around the opportunity. So Matt, thanks so much for having me on. We're thrilled you've recognized what we might have. And please, all the questions you have, or anyone who might have questions for us, please route them to us.
No, absolutely. Ian Graham, President of Oroco Resources, thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks very much, Matt.